Two men were found dead on a hillside outside Rio de Janeiro, dressed in matching suits, hair combed, their faces covered by homemade masks, cut by hand from sheets of lead. No wounds, no signs of a struggle. Only a small notebook in the grass with a handwritten instruction nobody has ever explained. Almost 60 years later, investigators still don't know whether they were killed, poisoned, tricked, or willingly followed a plan that went horribly wrong. Tonight, 3 real cases that were never closed, 3 scenes investigators couldn't fully explain, and people who, in the end, were never properly accounted for. You're watching True Fear Tapes. It was August 20th, 1966. A young man was flying a kite on a hill in Niterói, Brazil, when he saw something in the grass that didn't belong. 2 figures, lying still. He didn't go closer. He ran. When police climbed Vintem Hill the next day, what they found didn't make sense. 2 men lying side by side in the grass, dressed in matching suits. No visible injuries. No signs of a struggle. Their bodies were positioned as if they had laid down on their own. But on their faces, they wore matching masks, crude, heavy, cut from sheets of lead, the kind that looked like it was meant to shield the eyes from radiation or from an intense flash of light. The men were identified as Manuel Pereira da Cruz and Miguel José Viana, electronic technicians from a city not far away. They had told their families they were going out to buy supplies for work. They never came back. Near the bodies, police found a small canvas bag. Inside were 2 wet towels, 2 empty water bottles, and a handwritten note. In one of their pockets, investigators also recovered a small receipt from a local bar. According to records, the men had stopped there shortly before climbing the hill and ordered nothing but water. The note contained a list of instructions. It read, in part, be at the agreed place at 4:30. At 6:30, swallow the capsules. After the effect, protect metals. Await signal mask. According to the note, the 2 men hadn't gone to that hill to die. They had gone there to wait. For something, or someone. And this is where the case starts to fall apart. A shop owner reported seeing the men on the day they disappeared. According to him, they had bought a raincoat, even though the weather was clear. A woman who lived near the hill later told reporters she had seen a glowing, oval-shaped object in the sky over Vintem Hill around the time the men were estimated to have died. Her account was never officially verified, but the strangest part of the case wasn't the witnesses. It was the autopsy. By the time the bodies were brought down, decomposition had set in. According to reports, the medical examiner couldn't determine a cause of death. No obvious injuries, no clear signs of poisoning. Toxicology samples were reportedly delayed for weeks, and several were said to have been lost or never properly analyzed. The case went cold almost immediately. Theories filled the gap. Some believed the 2 men were part of a small spiritualist group that practiced contact rituals, attempts to communicate with beings they thought existed beyond Earth. In that theory, the lead masks were meant to shield them from a blinding light they expected to see. Others suspected a drug experiment that had gone wrong. To them, every detail looked rehearsed. The wet towels, the capsules, the remote location, the careful arrangement of the bodies. The case was reopened decades later. By then, the bodies had been buried, the notebook archived, and most of the witnesses were gone. The men in the lead masks remain frozen in the same crime scene photographs taken almost 60 years ago, suits neat, faces covered, hands at their sides, waiting for a signal that never came. That case is from 1966. The next one happened just 4 years later on the other side of Europe. And it might be the most carefully erased death investigators have ever seen. A father and his 2 young daughters were hiking through a snow-covered valley in Norway. Locals had a name for it, the Death Valley. It was November 29, 1970. Isdalen Valley, just outside the city of Bergen. A remote, rocky place known for hikers losing their way and never being found. The family had stepped off a marked trail to take a shortcut when one of the daughters noticed a smell. Something burnt. They moved between the rocks. And that's when the father saw her. A woman, lying on her back between the boulders. Her body partially burned, her face unrecognizable. Around her were scattered personal items, a melted plastic bottle, a passport, an umbrella, jewelry, a small bottle of sleeping pills. But what stood out wasn't what was there. It was what was missing. Every label on her clothes had been carefully cut out. Every serial number on her jewelry had been scratched off. Even her fingerprints were difficult to use, and nearly every identifying mark on her belongings had been deliberately removed. Whoever this woman was, someone had gone to great lengths to make her unidentifiable. And the deeper detectives looked, the stranger the case became. She had checked into hotels across Norway under at least 9 different names, different passports, different nationalities. Witnesses described her changing wigs between cities. According to hotel staff, she spoke fluent French, German, English, and Dutch, and yet none of them could say with any confidence who she actually was. In one hotel, she requested a room change because the previous one had a balcony facing the street. In another, a guest reported hearing her speaking quietly in German with a man at her door late at night. When staff went to check, she was alone. She always paid in cash. She always traveled light. 2 suitcases. No letters, no photographs, no personal effects of any kind, until investigators opened one of those suitcases. Hidden in the lining was a small notebook filled with handwritten codes. Letters, numbers, sequences that didn't appear to match any known cipher. For decades, those codes were considered unreadable. But that wasn't even the strangest detail. According to a witness, in the days before her death, the woman said something odd to a guest at her hotel. Quietly, in passing. She mentioned she would be leaving on a trip and would not be returning. She said it in a tone the witness later described as calm, almost rehearsed. 3 days later, she was dead. The autopsy reportedly showed she had ingested a large dose of sleeping pills before her death. Investigators noted what appeared to be traces of a flammable liquid near the body. But several details didn't add up. There were no matches on her body, no lighter found near the scene. Her shoes were placed neatly beside her, undamaged. According to investigators, the position of her body was unusual for someone who had simply collapsed there. Officially, the case was ruled a suicide. Unofficially, almost no detective who worked the case fully believed that. Years later, codebreakers managed to decrypt parts of the notebook. According to investigators, the codes turned out to be a travel log. Cities, dates, hotels, most matched her known movements, but not all of them. A small number of entries pointed to trips investigators could never verify. Places where, as far as records showed, she had never officially been. In the years that followed, one theory rose above the rest, that she may have been an intelligence operative, possibly working for a Cold War-era European service. At the time, Norway was secretly testing missile technology in remote regions. And according to reports, the Isdalen woman had been seen traveling close to several of those areas. But every theory dead-ended. No country publicly claimed her. No family came forward. Her dental records did not match any missing person record investigators could connect to her. To this day, no agency has ever publicly acknowledged who she was, or why she had been moving through Norway under false identities. In 2017, decades after her death, scientists used isotope analysis on her teeth to learn one final detail. According to their findings, she had likely grown up in Central Europe, possibly in southern Germany, and had moved between countries as a child. After that, she effectively disappeared from public records, until her body was found burning in a Norwegian valley. She is still buried today in a sealed zinc coffin in a cemetery in Bergen. The grave was preserved in case anyone, one day, ever came forward to claim her. So far, no one has. The first 2 cases left investigators with bodies they couldn't identify. The third case is different. In the third case, there were no bodies at all. On August 20th, 2007, a 12-year-old girl was walking along a beach on Jedediah Island, off the coast of British Columbia. The tide had just gone out. The sand was wet, and lying in the seaweed, half buried near her foot, was something that didn't look right. A sneaker, blue and white. A men's size 12. Inside was a human foot. She told her family. They called the police. Authorities treated it as an isolated, one-time discovery. It wasn't. 6 days later, on a different island in the same stretch of water, a second sneaker washed ashore. Inside, another human foot. In the years that followed, more appeared, and then more. Since 2007, more than 20 detached human feet, almost all of them inside running shoes, have washed up along the shoreline of the Salish Sea, the cold body of water that runs between Washington State and British Columbia. Different beaches, different brands, different sizes, men's feet, women's feet, and nothing else. No bodies, no bones. Just feet, inside sneakers, drifting in from the ocean. The internet ran the theories. A serial killer dumping victims, a plane crash, organized crime, trafficking. But the truth, when investigators eventually pieced it together, was quieter, and in some ways, more disturbing. According to authorities, DNA matched several of the recovered feet to people who had been reported missing from cities along the coast, most of whom had disappeared in circumstances consistent with drowning. In the cold, oxygen-poor water of the Salish Sea, bodies decompose slowly. Over time, the soft tissue around the ankle naturally breaks down. Modern athletic shoes, sealed and full of trapped air, are extremely buoyant. Eventually, the foot inside the shoe separates from the rest of the body and drifts, sometimes for months, sometimes for years. It was a quiet, scientific explanation, and for many of the cases, it fit, but not all of them. According to investigators, several of the recovered feet have never been identified. No matching DNA, no matching missing persons reports, just the foot and the shoe. There are also stranger details. According to reports, 2 of the recovered feet were eventually matched to the same person, a left and a right. They had washed ashore on different beaches, weeks apart, miles from each other. Another foot was reportedly found inside a model of shoe that had been out of production for years. Authorities have stressed that natural processes in the water can explain nearly all of these cases, but a small number of recoveries remain officially open, and the discoveries have continued long after the first headlines faded. People walking their dogs, children playing in the sand, families on vacation, all stumbling onto the same impossible scene, a sneaker in the surf, with someone still inside it. Authorities now ask anyone who finds unattended footwear along the shoreline to report it immediately. Most discoveries are eventually traced back to missing persons cases that closed quietly years ago, but not all of them. There are still feet in evidence storage in Canada and the United States that have never been identified. No name, no story, no one who ever came forward to claim what was left behind, just a sneaker. And whoever was once inside it. 3 cases, 3 scenes that should never have existed. 2 men in lead masks, waiting on a hill for a signal that never came. A woman who erased every trace of herself before she was found burning in the snow. And feet, drifting in from a sea that has never given back the rest. The names are still missing. The files are still open, and somewhere out there tonight, on a beach no one is watching, the tide is already bringing in the next one.